think it goes without saying that relationships can be complicated, sometimes quite complicated. So why is it in relationships, despite our willingness to be in relationships, we find it difficult and sometimes difficult to manage the truth and tell the truth? Why is it in relationships do we tell lies to ourselves? Why do we lie to others? And really, what is the fear of self-disclosure? Now, I've struggled with these issues over the years. I've had my fair share of relationship hiccups. I've also had the pleasure of listening to other people. You may have seen in my bio that I'm a psychiatrist. And when I had a clinical practice, I often heard patients tell me about their lives as well. I also come from a very large family and have a wide network of friends. And I've heard people talk about their relationships almost all of my life. And one of the things that I've heard and observed over these years has surprised me. And one of the first observations is that although we talk about wanting truth and openness in relationships, I don't think at times we truly value truth and openness in relationships. A case in point, if I were to ask this audience, by a show of hands, how many of you would see truth as an important attribute in relationships, how many would raise your hand? Okay, so it's a fair number, at least those that I can see up front. If I were to also ask you, how many of you have ever engaged in conversations, let's say with a friend who you might be attracted to? Maybe a text message or a telephone call, maybe emails, or maybe even dinner or drinks. But you didn't tell your spouse or your significant other. How many of you have also done that? Or honestly, we'll answer that question. Well, I think that the very nature that we, at one hand, we say we want honesty, while on the other hand, we sometimes use honesty for our own convenience. We sometimes fail to tell the truth, we sometimes tell little white lies, or sometimes omit the truth altogether. And I struggle, and I've struggled over the years trying to understand why do we do that. And one of the things that I've come to a conclusion is, and this is not based on any research, but just this my own observation, is that we struggle with the truth because we, in many ways, have difficulties hearing the truth. And we recognize that we tell ourselves, we tell little white lies, and we don't sometimes tell the full story when we're interacting with our mates or significant others. But I think if we were to acknowledge within ourselves that sometimes our mates also are telling us little white lies and not necessarily being forthcoming with us, we may then have to deal with the anxiety of understanding what their truths are and having both their truth and our truth on the table. And then we would have to reevaluate whether or not we are truly dealing with people or the person that we would want to be with. Now, I think that that's a common error that people make, is that when they hear the truth from someone, they sometimes feel that they have to have a knee-jerk reaction as opposed to calmly hearing what's happening. They sometimes feel that they have to have an action such as protest, become angry, or leave the relationship. I would say the fact that the person is sharing their lives does not mean that you need to leave. It merely means that you need to understand that they are sharing another aspect of their lives that you had, to this point, had not seen. Secrets play an important part in our lives. I think it goes without saying that secrets, we all have secrets. Some secrets we don't share with anyone. They're totally within us. Other secrets we may share with a select few. And then there are some secrets that we aren't even consciously aware of that seem to trickle up into our lives and sometimes wreak havoc in our everyday existence. Secrets help protect us. They help protect us from embarrassment, they help protect us from shame, and they help protect us from rejection. They prevent us from becoming one with each other. They prevent us from communicating clearly. Secrets are, on one hand, they drain us of our power. I would like to share with you a secret of mine, just to illustrate this point. I was named after my father. No, that's not the secret. The secret is I am the illegitimate son of my father, who happened to be a Baptist minister. Now, my mother and father were never married. My father, in fact, was married and had a family at the time that I was born and conceived. I mean, conceived and brought into the world, reverse order. And at the time when I was growing up, I didn't really think anything of it until I was about 11 years old, and one of my friends says to me, he says, "Willie, did you know you were a bastard?" And being 11 years old, I didn't quite understand what that phrase meant. But as upon him explaining it to me, I immediately became embarrassed. I immediately became just overwhelmed with shame, embarrassment. Really didn't feel as if I was equal to my friends and some of the other people around me. And I hid it. I began hiding it. This was when I was, like I said, about 11 or 12. And so up until I was in my 20s, I really didn't talk much about my family. I didn't talk much about things that were going on in my family. I hid that part of me. But as I said earlier, secrets drain you of your power. By hiding myself, I felt as if I wasn't really engaging in society. And I was carrying around my own personal scarlet letter. And I knew I had to have it gone. I wanted it gone. So I tell you this now because as I've grown through the years, I've exposed that secret. I've decided to share my life. And now that secret no longer has the power that it had before. And it brought me to the point to realize that secrets have a way of trapping you in a life that you really don't want. But the only way to really expose and be truthful to yourself and be authentic is to share your life. And so that brought me into, why aren't we doing more of this in relationships? And I really question, why aren't we doing it more in relationships? And one of the reasons that I think that we don't do it is because we fear rejection or we fear abandonment. Now, all too often, when we begin sharing a side of ourselves that we have, prior to that point, not spoken about to our loved ones, they have to adjust to where we are. Sometimes they adjust appropriately, or they don't leave, but sometimes they do. They feel that what you're saying is not compatible with what they had signed up for. But again, I think if we were to step back and recognize that we all harbor secret sides that we haven't shared with each other, we would be a little bit more, what should I say? We would be a little bit more cautious in our desires to leave relationships just because you have found a new layer that you had previously not noticed. I mentioned to you earlier that I have had relationship hiccups in the past. I want to share with you one of those relationship hiccups. I'm twice divorced. And as a psychiatrist, I thought I would have some insights into my life. But that was not the case. Psychiatrists are no different from anyone else when it comes to having insights into their own personal lives. But what I realized, when I was going through my separation of my second divorce, I realized that I truly hadn't been truthful to myself when I decided to get married. I had spent my early years, my early 20s or so, going through school and through med school and that sort of thing. So I really didn't spend a lot of time. I really didn't spend a lot of time at all in dating. I was nose down into the books. And so when I finally finished school and that sort of thing, I started to look and date. But I dated with a purpose. I wanted this so-called prototypic American dream. You know, the wife, 2 to 3 kids, a house, and a career, a nice career. And so I was going for that. And so I figured that that was the mark of success. And like many of you who may have also done things of this nature, I didn't question whether or not that was my dream or whether or not it was a dream that I had took on just because society said it was important. And so what happened is that while I was in the middle of this my last relationship, I realized that I liked many aspects of the marriage life. I enjoyed having my children and family, but there were many aspects that were alien to me, such aspects as fidelity and monogamy. Those were not issues that I had come to terms with. As I said, I had spent a lot of years being very studious and being very much on point with my education. And I wanted that side of me to grow. But unfortunately, within the marriage, it could not grow. And so I began dating. Unfortunately, I was still married. Marriage and dating don't necessarily mix. And so I started talking. I had a lot of conversations with my now ex-wife, and I spoke to her about my newfound revelations. And she listened, but as is often the case with authentic conversations, her wishes were not my wishes were not her wishes. And the marriage ended in divorce. But an interesting thing happened along the way and over the years of post-divorce. You know, when I began having that conversation with my wife, I feared that I would lose the respect of her, my children, my family and friends. But the thing that happened was that it didn't happen. I still showed my wife and my family that I was there, I am there. My family and friends saw that I was still there, and despite my desires to live this alternative life that was different from how society viewed that I should live. But one of the things that happened is that by having this authentic conversation, both my wife and I were able to maintain our relationship, our friendship, and we still have that friendship today. And the love that I have for my children is still there, and my family and friends also understand where I am. So although I took a chance, a leap of faith in being authentic, and it was a scary leap of faith, and it went totally against what I considered my professional standing in society, and went against all of the societal norms, I felt it was in keeping with my norms. And so this empowerment that I felt by being authentic, once again, brought me back to when I spoke about my childhood. It taught me that being yourself is really all that we have. We shouldn't try to put on airs or be something that we aren't. And so my wish for you, and my wish for everyone, is to try authenticity. Now, we've tried, and many of us have been in relationships where we may tell white lies, manipulate, or deceive as a means of interacting. But it's really important that you try the other side of the coin, and that is being honest, being brave, and being willing to listen as well as hear and verbalize what you feel. In closing, I wanted to leave you with two points. Is one that I often tell my children, and it relates to the power of being you when you're in the right place. And it says, we all have superpowers. We just need to find the right place to exercise them. Remember that on Krypton, even Superman is just a man. The second point is a quote by Brené Brown, and it says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who you think you should be and embracing who you are. With that, I conclude.